Ajinkya, for taking out your Sunday morning and speaking to us at the Thinking Out Loud podcast. It's a pleasure to have you around with us, and we are looking forward to a great conversation to know more about the world of finance and how Wint Wealth is being one of the forerunners in completely changing that ecosystem within the country. Thank you so much again, Ajinkya.
No, pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, Ajinkya, to take this conversation forward, right? One question that we ask all our panelists is, how was it like growing up in terms of finance, right? Like, were you always of the mindset that, this is the domain that I want to be in, or this is the domain wherein, I want to build something, or this is the domain where I see myself? Like, was it always so fixated, or, it's more like a serendipity sort of a thing that panned out?
Yeah, it's serendipity. I'm a mechanical engineer by profession. Don't have any finance official degree as such. So just learn things on the go. Landed in fintech space. Started enjoying and eventually started Wint Wealth. So complete serendipity, I would say.
So, just a follow-up question, Ajinkya, on that, right? Like, you've done your BTech in, like you rightly mentioned, mechanical engineering, right? With a minor in management. And I think your BTech is from IIT Gandhinagar, if I'm not wrong, correct? And you passed out in 2012. So, I mean, in those days, right, like 10 years back from now, IIT Gandhinagar was one of the newer IITs, if I'm not wrong, right? So how was the whole segment wherein you I think the whole finance thing would have come in because of the minors in management, if I'm correct, like in
Not really.
Understand.
Not really. I mean, the experience was great. I was from the first batch.
Okay.
But like my father has a manufacturing business of automobile parts manufacturing. So I joined his business. Then started my first startup. That was B2B e-commerce and pivoted that to an invoice bill discounting platform. That's how I landed in fintech space. Right. And then continued that journey. But it had nothing to do per se with minor in management and stuff. I mean, I did learn like a lot of useful things, but back then also I wasn't like, I didn't have any fixation ki finance mein kuch karna.
Correct. Fair.
So if you can just kind of walk us through the story of how this entire idea of Wint Wealth came into existence, from maybe your work ex in Credit Vidya and stuff like that. How did the entire, you're working somewhere and then slowly and steadily and so you started Wint Wealth. So how does this entire transition happen? If you can walk us through your experience.
Sure. So I had one startup before. It was called creditperiod.com. It was acquired by Flexi Loans in late 2016, right? So like it wasn't a great exit, but I learned very important things and was very sure कि यार next time आके फोड़ेंगे कुछ. And then I joined Credit Vidya. I helped them launch their marketplace business. After Credit Vidya, I was at MSwipe, where I was head of merchant lending business. So what happened when I joined Credit Vidya, I was very sure कि यार like कुछ आके नया बनाना है, नया startup करना है कभी ना कभी. So I was fully focused on figuring out that right idea, right problem, right team, etc. So I didn't want to waste time learning investing. So I said, I don't want to put money in mutual fund, etc. So I started, whatever money I was saving, I started parking that money in my father's business. Right. So he had a bank loan at about 12%. He said, I'll give you 11%. For me, it was a sweet deal. Ki fix है liquid है घर का पैसा धंधा and very safe. धंधा डूबेगा पैसा नहीं है पैसा आ जाएगा. Right. And I moved on. And at both Credit Vidya and MSwipe, there used to be always discussion among colleagues कि कौन सा mutual fund अच्छा है, कौन सा stock भागने वाला है, कहाँ डालना चाहिए पैसा. And people, I used to keep quiet, and people used to ask me कि, hey, what do you do, man? I used to tell them मैंने तो बापू के इसमें डाल के रखा है. I used to say it very in a very funny tone, right? And people used to be curious, and they used to love what I was doing, and they used to be like कि हाँ हमको भी डालना है. A colleague at MSwipe once said, अजिंक्य मेरे को डालना ही है इसमें, तो बता कैसे डालना है. So I told him very casually कि भाई दे दे मुझे पैसा, and immediately transferred 20,000 to me using UPI, right? And that actually got me thinking, hey, why are people liking it so much? So I started digging more in personal finance, how people manage money, how they look at money, how they invest, how they save, what are the different classes of people, what are their investing habits, and quickly realized when Indians have crazy obsession with fixed income products. and there are no great fixed income products available. And because of my lending background and fintech background, I knew such products were available, but in higher ticket sizes, 50 lakh and above, only for ultra rich people. So we could see that white space. I mean, some kind of assets or products which give you higher than FD return, but are less risky than equities. Those asset classes are only available to HNIs. Can we democratize those asset classes? That was the first thought. We started digging more there, and eventually that led to Wint Wealth.
Acha. So, Abhi, आपने, you said about the entire thing, you had deposited your money with that, and then you were getting returns and stuff like that. तो ये जो idea का transition हुआ, which was exceptional, then जब Wint Wealth खुला, then how did you find your co-founders? Because I think two of them again are from IIT Gandhinagar and one is from IIT Roorkee. So, were they your batchmates?
We are 5 co-founders. I and Abhik are from IIT Gandhinagar. Shashank and Vinay are from IIT Bombay, and Anshul is from IIT Roorkee.
Right.
So Abhik was my co-founder in previous startup also.
Okay.
Then Abhik was at Shop 101, and there he used to work closely with Shashank and Vinay. And I knew Anshul, I got to know Anshul during some of the discussions only. So Anshul was all these assets I mentioned, right? These are available for HNIs and institutional investors. Anshul used to syndicate those assets for those investors.
Understood.
So, and he was also exploring doing something similar. So we got together and started. So, right, through mutual connection, we knew each other kind of.
Understood. So, equities obviously is a very simple, आप brokerage account बनाओ, start investing. But ऐसा है कि debt को लोगों को समझने में problem होता है. Maybe fixed deposits पता है, which ideally no one recommends to invest. अगर आप safety के लिए जा रहे हो तो ठीक है. But otherwise, if you want to destroy your wealth, maybe fixed deposits is something where invest because it doesn't beat inflation. और ये debt में ऐसा corporate bonds है या debentures है या ऐसा कुछ है जो लोगों को बहुत समझ में नहीं आता है. So I think via something like Wint Wealth, now it's trying to reach out to a lot of people, because the ticket size is first of all lower. So people are able to invest and you get a good 9, 10, 11% on what you're putting, right? So ये I think ये आप बहुत अच्छे से fix कर रहे हो. Is that also was one of your things because fixed income products थोड़ा complex है और समझने में problem होता है and via Wint Wealth, you are trying to solve this problem as well?
We want to basically make sure all fixed income assets are available, right? For retail investor. वो बस availability से नहीं होगा, उसका accessibility भी solve करना पड़ेगा. That means you have to solve for regulation, you have to also solve for education, and then you have to solve for distribution also, right?
Correct.
So, if we have to be successful, we have to do all these things in a proper way, and to with the right spirits also. So it is part we were very heavy on education, making sure these are palatable, these are attractive assets, and we are still educating well about the risk. So that was always the thought from day one.
Understood.
So Ajinkya, आपकी ये बात पे I would just want to double click once. So Zerodha has this separate application called Veracity, right? Through which they teach people about आपका equities हो गया, F&O trading and all of that. So आपने rightly mentioned करा that there is a gap, there's a knowledge gap, and Wint Wealth is trying to close that gap with its product. But at the same time, is Wint Wealth doing anything in terms of educational content, right? जिससे कि ये gap close हो रही है और people are being more aware about fixed income instruments. Is something like that happening?
कर रहे हैं, but उतने scale पे नहीं, Varsity की scale पे नहीं. We don't have those many resources. Currently, the education is very focused on the kind of assets we are bringing. But eventually, yes, we plan to bring all kind of fixed income assets. At least educate people about fixed income assets. Right. So that's the plan. But currently, very much focuses on our own assets and education around those asset class.
Correct.
That asset class.
So just to double click on that, Ajinkya, आपने बोला that you are trying to educate people about the fixed income assets that you have on your platform, right? And honestly, people know that you were one of the LinkedIn top voices, right? So we just wanted to understand that how did you leverage LinkedIn, leverage your personal profile in terms of organically distributing Wint Wealth and how has your journey been as a creator on LinkedIn, and how did it help Wint Wealth in its journey forward?
Yeah, actually, both started very parallelly. It wasn't that I was writing on LinkedIn for like 3-4 years before. When we started Wint Wealth only, then we had some like it took. We knew that product launch could take 5-6 months. So I had some time on hand, so I started exploring writing and found out white space and started writing. Right. It definitely has helped, but the aim was not to actually, when we started writing LinkedIn, the aim was not to like aim was not to become top voice or basically create like big profile and big following. It happened, but the idea was to understand user, what they like, what they don't like, and test those hypotheses. So for us, the LinkedIn was kind of a short experiment place, right? A lab to experiment with our hypothesis about users, what they understand, what they don't understand, what kind of language it is palatable, what they know, what they will like and not. And those kind of hypotheses we used to build and build a post around that, and eventually we would get to know whether that post worked or not. And that helped us understand the user. So that was the idea, but it started working well and we continued those efforts. It definitely has helped in the wealth tech industry. I mean, uh, you eventually you have to trust someone, right? When you're giving somebody money to manage, or manage is a very different word, but let's say if you're investing in any other platform, any platform's asset, you got to trust the platform to some extent, right? You got to believe that the team is competent, the founders are competent, right? That kind of belief LinkedIn created on a massive scale, so which no paid promotion, no paid ad could have created for us.
Understood. So again, just one more follow-up question on that, because Samyak and I also actively create content on LinkedIn, right? So ideally, what we feel is LinkedIn now is becoming a very evolved, एक बहुत mature platform बन रहा है for creators, influencers सभी के लिए. And we तो rigorously follow you on LinkedIn, so we तो see that you put out post almost on a daily basis. Like that's the frequency that we've seen you with posting. So what is your views on LinkedIn as a platform, in terms of social media, and what is that psyche that you have? Yeah, आपका notion क्या है in terms of creating content? Like everyone has a different style in terms of creation. So how do you go about with your creations so that you are putting forward your learnings, but at the same time, Wint Wealth message is also, somehow subtly getting pushed forward?
Yeah, so the key thing we realize, if we do our job well of like engaging audience, Wint Wealth का message अपने आप convey हो जाता है. We don't need to worry about that.
Correct.
Right. So idea is very simple. Like people should, like, even if you're taking half a minute of people's time, they should gain something out of it. So it should be actionable insight, explained in a very simple word, and generally answering questions that people would generally have. Right. So that, and we stick to that. I mean, and we stick to personal finance. I don't write about anything else. Occasionally, as a person, I might write, but as a LinkedIn, as a creator, LinkedIn creator, I haven't even thought of going ये करके देखते वो करके देखते वो करके देखते. We stick to personal finance and topic related to that. It could be taxation, it could be loans, credit cards related stuff, investing related stuff, mutual fund related stuff. But it's basically personal finance is our boundary line, and we stick to it. Write in simple words, make it jargon free, and make sure those, like, you give actionable insights to people. And that is the very base funda. Now, like, that simplification is very complex process, right? And like that is main, like, crux, main differentiator.
Got it. समझ गया.
So coming again to Wint Wealth, Ajinkya. So आपका cap table exceptional hai, right? You have the best VCs in the house, then you have the best angel investors in the house, और उसमें भी VCs में you have the likes of Better and all that. And angel investors में you have a lot of content creators, right? So इसके पीछे का what was the background? Like, you always wanted them as in your cap table content creators, कि they love this idea and they only started pitching that they want to invest, because सारे content creators are like one of the biggest in the country. So
ये
just want to understand.
हाँ एक्चुअली चालू कैसे हुआ पता है मतलब ऐसा नहीं था कि इनके साथ करना है मतलब वी स्टार्टेड एक्सप्लोरिंग कि कैन वी वर्क विद देम टू एजुकेट पीपल अबाउट विंट वेल्थ सो व्हेन वी स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग टू देम वी रियलाइज आई मीन दे लाइक वंस दे अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट विंट वेल्थ इज they sort of explain in a much simpler way about wind wealth than we do, right?
Correct.
So because they've understood their audience, they have been working on simplifying these things. So we realized, I mean, there is a lot we could learn from them, and if they have skin in the game, they have incentive to give us time, right? So we haven't given anyone any sweat equity or advisory equity or anything. It's just that they put in money, and that's how we created that round in saying, I mean, it obviously helps us build our credibility, but idea was to learn from them. Like, so when we first bring out amortization asset, it was very difficult concept for people कि यार 4 महीने में पैसा आ रहा है तो तुम बोल रहे हो तुम्हारा एक्सेलर 10% है बट अभी 1 लाख दो तो मेरे को 1,07,000 आ रहा है 1 साल बाद बिकॉज हर 4 महीने में 33,000 आ रहा है राइट तो ये कैसे एक्सप्लेन करना है एंड वी यूज्ड टू लाइक कपल ऑफ क्रिएटर्स एक्सप्लेन्ड इट टू अस बेटर देन वी कुड एक्सप्लेन देन वी बेसिकली took that knowledge website में उसका एक visual बनाया और फिर डाला right so those were the learning curves for which we wanted to work with them and fortunately they were also interested in putting money so 2-3 लोगों ने डाल दिया फिर then we started reaching out to everyone saying hey this is the round is happening do you want to come in and we are very fortunate I mean they decided to put in money.
Okay, so again आपका now asset जो भी it's listed on your platform it gets sold within minutes if not days also तो मतलब reach तो you are getting right and उसमें भी I think your CAC is going low because you now the word of mouth and community build हो गई है तो how this influencer marketing has played a role because if you start promoting maybe on like Google ads or Facebook ads right तो आपका CAC में भी higher हो जाता है but with influencer marketing we have observed कि वो CAC is coming down so how is that the idea or is that happening actually
कम होता है बढ़ता भी है मतलब इवेंचुअली हर एक चैनल जितना तुम निचोड़ोगे वो लाइक आफ्टर अ पॉइंट CAC इंक्रीज होना चालू होता है सो इट इज हैपनिंग अक्रॉस चैनल्स राइट सो यू couple of channels that you have to master is one is organic second is referral
right
especially in a wealth business because if you do too much advertisement it comes across as sales right so organic और referral छोड़ के हर एक चैनल टेम्पररी है वो तुम्हें नेक्स्ट पड़ाव तक लेके जाएगा नेक्स्ट स्टेज तक बट कहीं ना कहीं जाके हर चैनल टैप आउट होने वाला है
बराबर है
right and that's how we work on that.
Understood.
Ajinkya, just आपके लिए एक follow-up question on what Samyak asked, right? So there was a Twitter post, if I'm not wrong, by Vardhan of Tortoise, जिसमें उन्होंने आपके एक प्रोडक्ट की बात करी थी. I think आपका जो gold based asset निकला था, right? So he clearly tweeted that product or that asset got sold out in 45 minutes. The one previous to that got sold out in 4 days, and the one previous to that took, say, a few weeks, right? So, understanding the growth of the product, right? I just wanted to ask that how did the whole, transition take place from product A going out in the market in few weeks to product C going out in the market and getting sold in under an hour, which is a big thing. Like honestly, it's a big thing. So वो कैसे journey पूरी हुई and how did people start having faith in the product in the first place?
I think मतलब ऐसा कोई एम नहीं था कि इतने इसमें करना है मतलब भी हमने प्रोसेस पे काफी काम किया सो व्हेन वी फर्स्ट लॉन्च वी क्विकली रियलाइज लोगों को रिस्क के बारे में समझ में नहीं आ रहा है और हम अच्छी तरह एजुकेट नहीं कर रहे सो वी रिवैम्प्ड द वेबसाइट बहुत सारे रिस्क के डिस्क्लोजर्स डाले ये किए वो किए counterintuitive that actually help build trust for the people कि यार like user को finally he wants to be assured कि the platform is gonna take care of me they are not going to short sell me for their own good right so that we did then we realized I mean if people are putting in money in new asset class they don't have problem just with asset class but they also have problem with the website whether the website is authentic are there real people behind it so very initial days we had actually a Zoom button on the website itself so you could directly book a Zoom call and one of the founder would show up
Oh,
right? And Abhik led that exercise, my co-founder. He has spoken to at least 2,000, 3,000 people, may not be on Zoom, but at least on calls, SMS, LinkedIn, etc. At least he has touched base one-on-one with 2,000, 3,000 people initially. I should have done about 500. Then other founders also pitched in, right? So that made sure at least initial 5-10,000 people kind of had talked to one of us personally or had gotten in touch, right? And then we started doing webinars, like to educate people on, like, so 1,000 people could come together and ask us questions. And in every webinar, we answer all the questions. So some of the webinars have gone on for 4 hours. So we don't stop until all the questions are answered, right? So that actually helped us build that trust. But all these are hindsight knowledge, I mean, right? So if you had asked me back then कि क्या करने से होगा, we didn't have idea. We were doing whatever users were telling us कि यार ये मतलब if users had question, we used to go and answer them, right? But we were always clear कि एक एक user को भी पकड़ के रखना है, मतलब पकड़ के रखना मतलब सेल नहीं करना है, but उसका question पूरा आंसर होना चाहिए. He should go satisfied, and that may mean that he decides not to invest. We are fine with that, right? तो हमको उसको कन्वर्ट नहीं करना है, हमको उसको लॉजिकल कंक्लूजन पे लेके जाना है. उसके लिए दैट कुड बी वो इन्वेस्ट करना ही नहीं करना, उसको लिम्बो में नहीं रहना चाहिए कि ही शुड नॉट थिंक कि सोचता हूँ, राइट? वो अगर वो करता है तो ठीक है, बट अगर उसको कुछ आंसर चाहिए, उसको कुछ चाहिए, तो वी शुड बी देयर. वन ऑफ द टीम मेंबर शुड बी देयर, राइट? Then once we had a different team, which then we had this Zoom button still for long time. We had this Zoom button on the website where then our other team members started showing up.
got it.
Right. So that basically मतलब अभी वो फिर धीरे धीरे then webinar आ गया, फिर लोग WhatsApp हमने formally channel setup किया where people could come and ask questions. आज भी calls चलते हैं, Zoom call पे लोग जाते हैं, होता है, मतलब वो सब, मतलब वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर अभी हम इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं उस सब.
समझ गया. सो आपने एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट वर्ड बोला इन दिस आंसर ऑफ योर्स, इज एक्सपीरियंस, राइट? आपने काफी बार इस वर्ड पे फोकस किया. एंड वन थिंग दैट वी कम टू रियलाइज इज दैट मॉडर्न डे फिनटेक्स, if we compare it with some fintechs say 10 years before this, I think the thing that was lacking the most was in terms of the user experience that they were building, right? So I just wanted to understand how Wint Wealth as an organization is focusing on improving that user experience. और अगर technical terms में बोलो तो UI UX, जैसे आपने website की बात करी, आपने user flow की बात करी, तो if अगर आप उस पे कुछ थोड़ा बता पाए.
In fact, we haven't done great job on that yet, right? You would see a lot of good work being done in last quarter, and next 3 quarters you'll see awesome work being done, right? Right. So we didn't invest heavily, but we made up for that with human touch. So even today we I guess 1 quarter back we have a bot layer in WhatsApp. Yeah. Where you ping, then there is a standard question, but even with one click you can talk to any team member, right? Before that, if you had said hi, even somebody saying hi used to be a human being, right? And people can make that out कि bot वाला answer है या कोई human being है क्या. And people used to get on calls and answer all the questions. So we tried, we were clear कि अभी तक product mature होना बाकी है, because we weren't clear कि क्या build करना, कैसे build करना. वो सब अभी last 6 महीने से हमने उस पे focus करना चालू किया. तो वो we made up to that using actual human touch, right? And now we are now we are very sure of what to build, what are the learnings, etc. Now we have started productizing it, right? So at the end of the day, it was very superior experience. It wasn't a scalable, but it was a very superior experience. And now we are building that scalable superior experience. But yes, experience matters a lot. I mean,
I think trust and experience, whatever both the things are the most important. I feel you spoke about that. So how now coming to again the revenue model? How does Wint Wealth make money by listing these bonds?
Yeah, we make about 1% on every bond that is sold, right? Okay. And that's good enough revenue for us to and obviously this is a retail tech franchise, right? So we'll be bringing more asset classes, right, more cross-sell opportunities, more value creation, more wallet share for the customer.
Okay. And अभी जैसे ये आप टिकट साइज भी होता है, राइट? एक बॉन्ड का 100% जब भी as many people subscribe, then it has to be closed, and then maybe you have to wait for the second round to come in. So abhi jaise as a first time investor, like what are the risks which a normal investor or a retail investor जिसको आइडिया ही नहीं है कि बॉन्ड क्या है, कि किस में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, बट वो बोल रहा है कि ठीक है टिकट साइज कम है, फिक्स्ड रिटर्न मिल रहा है जो एफडी से बेटर है, तो ट्राई तो करते हैं इन्वेस्ट करने का. तो एज अ लेमैन अगर कोई इफ समवन इज वाचिंग दिस वीडियो, तो उसको अगर समझना हो कि ये रिस्क क्या है ये बॉन्ड्स में इन्वेस्ट करने का, तो इन अ सिंपल वे हाउ विल यू मेक हिम अंडरस्टैंड?
श्योर. तो पहले एक बार 1 मिनट में बॉन्ड क्या है समझ लेते, किस टाइप के बॉन्ड हम लाते हैं, राइट. हम अभी एनबीएफसी इशूड ही बॉन्ड लाते हैं. एनबीएफसी नॉन बैंकिंग फाइनेंशियल कंपनी जो लोन देती है बट जो बैंक नहीं होती, ठीक है. अब वो जब लाइक और वो बॉन्ड इशू करती है, वो बॉन्ड हम हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पे लाते हैं.
राइट.
वो बॉन्ड हम सीनियर सिक्योर्ड बॉन्ड ही लाते हैं. तो सिक्योर्ड बॉन्ड मतलब क्या होता है, देयर इज अंडरलाइंग कोलैटरल. तो यहाँ कोलैटरल क्या होता है कि उसने अगर लाइक 100 लोन दिए तो वो 100 लोन कोलैटरल है. तो अगर वो एनबीएफसी अपना पैसा वापस नहीं लौटा पाई, इफ दे आर नॉट एबल टू रिटर्न देयर मनी कमिंग फ्रॉम दैट लोन विल एक्ट एज अ सिक्योरिटी, राइट. And now if the bond is generally like this generally I'm telling a bond is of 10 crore, we basically take loans worth 12 crore. 20% additional loans are there.
Understood.
Then there are strict terms and conditions what kind of loan should be there. There cannot be any NP loan. All loans should be healthy. If it is a property loan, it should be particular LTV. It should be, if it is a commercial property, it can be from particular sectors. Certain sectors cannot be there. Geographical spread should be there, right? Maximum ticket size, minimum ticket size, everything is very well defined, right? And like then there is a tenure, right? And this is how there is a bond, and you get certain interest rate, right? Now there are 3 risks that are involved, right? There is credit risk, there is liquidity risk, there is fraud risk, right? So liquidity risk is money being stuck, credit risk is money being lost, and fraud risk is fraud by NBFC promoter, right? So how and like in any, like if you go for any higher return product, right, even equity or anything, there is risk involved, therefore the return is higher. The best products are where risks are mitigated well, right?
Yes.
So in equity you have mutual fund which basically tries to diversify. There is some expert sitting and tries to, then there is index which minimizes even risk even further to some extent compared to stock, right? In bonds, so these 3 risks are there. Liquidity risk, credit risk are there, fraud risk is there. How do we mitigate this? One is like we like credit risk. How we mitigate is we make sure the NBFC has enough skin in the game, so they have higher equity, right, compared to their debt. They have good set of investors, right? And plus while tweaking the bond, we make sure the structure is very clean, so that there is this additional collateral. The maturity is not more than 3 years generally. Then there is amortizing structure so that money is recovered. So that's how we mitigate credit risk. For liquidity risk, I mean, we ask people to diversify across bonds, right? And we also facilitate secondary trading. So if the bond has a maturity of 2 years, if you want to exit in 6 months, we help you exit, but we don't guarantee. So you can exit if there is a buyer. So we help you find buyer. As long as there is a buyer, you can exit. So that's how we mitigate liquidity risk. For fraud risk, we do our own diligence. We do promoter due diligence. We do market intelligence. Sometimes we try to visit with these NBFC or business branches, borrowers anonymously, get that data, try to cross-check that data. So a lot of fraud tech has been built inside, right? And we also, on every bond issue that we bring on the platform, we invest 2% of the bond issue and hold till maturity. Wow. So we also have skin in the game. Okay. So we are the largest investor. That makes sure that we take care of all this risk from our own perspective, right? And that basically makes sure that our interests are aligned to investor interests, customer interests, right? So we try to mitigate this risk. The risks are still not zero, right? They are still higher than FD. But we try to mitigate, and that's how these are the risks involved: liquidity, credit, and fraud, and that's how we mitigate those risks.
Okay. And how does the payment work? So say I put like 1 lakh rupees in a particular bond, which has a maybe 10% payout on maybe quarterly, 6-month, yearly basis, and then there's a payment. So like how is the structure finalized? Is it done by the NBFC itself? मैं हर 3 महीने में पैसे वापस दूंगा या 6 महीने में?
While issuing the bond, that structure is finalized. So every bond can have different structure, right? Some of the bonds we have brought have quarterly repayment, some of them have half yearly repayment, some of them have yearly repayment, some of them have 9-month payment. So we like our credit. So basically, based on availability of bonds, etc., what our risk team, we have an in-house risk team, which basically guides us which are good bonds, which are bad bonds, which filter our criteria. We only bring those, and on those, like whenever that payment is due, it directly flows into your bank account connected to your Demat account. So all these
Okay.
bonds are in Demat format. Right.
Okay.
So you need to have Demat account, and like whatever bank account you have connected to Demat account, money flows into that.
Understood. Understood. And how does the role of credit rating play here? मतलब आप लोग obviously there all the bonds have a rating. So do
Yeah,
you have a particular filter?
we don't really have a filter. I'll tell you, there is actually like that's how we figure out like the good bonds from bad bonds, because there is arbitrage in rating. So rating actually uh, uh, indicate probability of default and not probability of loss.
Right.
So let me explain. So if a AAA rated entity issues unsecured bond, it is still rated AAA. That means the entity defaulting chance is low. But if that default were to happen, recovery, the loss will be very higher, right? But on the other hand, let's say if there is a BBB rated entity, the bond is secured by really good asset, over collateralized well. So even if the entity defaulting chances are definitely higher than AAA, but probability of loss is much lower. I think like we believe as a retail investor, first we have to minimize the probability of loss, right? And then then obviously you have to minimize the probability of default also, but probability of loss lowering, that is more important, right? So we focus on such bond and bring those bonds. So therefore, because the rating generally for those bond, like the kind of bonds we bring on the platform, rating is in A or BBB range, because that's where the yields are high. In that range, wherever we think that credit risk is low, according to us, there is arbitrage compared to the return is high, but the risk is low. That kind of bonds we bring on the platform.
Understood. Can you just explain the probability of default and probability of loss, the difference?
Sure. Yeah. So let's say if NBFC is going to give you 100 rupees on, let's say, 1st January 2023.
Right.
If they don't give you that money on that day, 100 rupees, that is called default. Even if they pay 99, right? Now, there is probability of default. So rating actually measures probability of default. Now, what I'm also interested to know, what if they don't pay on that day? What is probability of me getting that money back? Okay. That is probability of loss. So, if entity instead of 1st Jan pays on 20th Jan, it is still called, it will be default till 20th Jan, right? But I'm more interested in making sure my money is repaid back, right? Okay. Even if at all there is a delay, I want to make sure money is paid back.
Right.
So if unsecured AAA rated bond, if that defaults, there is no security. So it's very hard because the default has happened. Lot of things have gone wrong. So it's very difficult that money will be recovered. Very improbable to say.
Understood. Explained like very nicely. Now, as a first-time user, मैं आपके platform पे आया, and there are a list of bonds obviously which are listed. I have an option to invest in whatever I want. So, as a first-time user, मुझे क्या देखना चाहिए before investing in a particular bond?
Understand the risk well broadly. ठीक है. Start small. Like बहुत बार हमने देखा है लोग आके 1 लाख डाल रहे हैं, 2 लाख डाल रहे हैं, and we reach out to those people and tell them this is a long game, right? This is not crypto जो overnight ऊपर नीचे जाए, right? So start small, understand the asset class. Whatever you read and everything, you won't understand everything in first asset. So invest in one asset, very small amount, then invest in second asset, very small amount. Slowly you'll start understanding and appreciating the risk, and then only diversify well. At least invest in 10 bond, right? So that your exposure is diversified. So start small, diversify well, and only invest after understanding the risk. यही कहते हैं हम लोग.
Understood. Fair point.
So Ajinkya, wanted to just understand that, given that Wint Wealth is creating a dent in this sector in the economy, right? What is yours and other co-founders' vision of Wint Wealth? Like 10 years, 15 years down the line, what would be Wint Wealth synonymous to?
देखो क्या है कि मतलब आइडिया इज टू ब्रिंग ऑल ऑन लाइक मोर एंड मोर फिक्स इनकम एसेट क्लास. बट अगर सोल है तो है कि वी वांट टू बी द मोस्ट ट्रांसपेरेंट, most customer centric wealth company in India, right? The way we take care of users, if somebody beats me on that, I will be very personally very hurt and like angry to be frank, right? So we want to be the most customer centric wealth tech company for retail investors of India. Obviously we have started with like one kind of fixed income. We are planning to bring more and more fixed income assets, right? And then we'll see how it pans out, right? But soul is like this is for retail investors, and we want to be most customer centric wealth tech.
Got it.
Makes sense. So like obviously you are focusing on the debt side of the asset class, then there is obviously equities, there is maybe gold, then there is obviously cryptocurrency, then there is like alternative investments, startup investments and stuff like that. So as someone who has just say like 10,000 rupees to invest, 20,000 rupees to invest in a month, how should he diversify his asset across different classes?
Yeah, this is a very difficult question, but general rule of personal finance is first you should have health insurance, term insurance, then emergency fund. And if you're saving really, let's say if you're just saving 10,000, 20,000 rupees, I wouldn't personally invest anything except mutual funds. I would not even invest in bonds because that alpha won't actually like create a dent. Generally, I tell people like I've written this on LinkedIn many times. Like your first aim of becoming rich is getting into 30% tax bracket, right? Because unless you are able to save more, whatever you invest, even if you are able to create instead of 10% return, you are able to create 2% extra. But creating that 2% will have some risk. You will have to spend a lot of time. Instead, if you are able to increase your salary by 2%, you will anyway save 2%, and that is permanent. And 2% increase is very much easily achievable, right? And it's in your control, right? How market behaves is not in your control. If you consistently achieve, let's say 20-30% compounding, that you can only achieve in your increase.
Right.
Nobody in the market is going to give you 20% XRR long term, right? Unless there is some magician, right? But like, but in your career, it is very much possible, right? Especially at early stage. So unless you're able to save 25-50,000, you should just focus on increasing your salary rather than like trying to maximize. Just invest in index fund and leave. Make sure you are covered on insurance, health, term, and then you have emergency fund, and then index fund is sufficient, man.
Understood.
So I think personally I would do. I mean, obviously this everybody will have their own idea of risk, how they manage their personal finance. They will have their unique risk appetite, position, etc.
So I think personal finance, that's why becomes very relative to each person's needs and wants, I feel. And the best part about this answer I liked, Ajinkya, is that you didn't sell कि नहीं डेट तो होना ही चाहिए, you know, you were sure that नहीं, that's something I was very happy कि, you know, someone who wants to sell, he'll be like नहीं डेट तो होना ही चाहिए because you have a company which is built on that. And that's how, you know, your entire LinkedIn posts are so nice in terms of personal finance because it really helps people. Like obviously sort your term insurance, health insurance, maybe emergency fund 6 months to 1 year, I'm assuming, and then maybe go to debt. So now say I have a sizable income, I've grown in my career, and now I'm able to invest like 30-40,000 rupees. Then the allocation should change, right? Now I have to have an exposure to debt side of the market.
Then you'll start having debt exposures. You will want to park some. You will have some goals which are 2-3 years down the line, so you can't invest in equity. So you will need debt. So debt is very goal focused. कि आपको 2-3 साल का अगर कुछ goal है, या you don't want to park everything in equity, then debt is a better way, right?
Understood.
And that's how like वही debt का significance है. You can't really debt अच्छा इसलिए सब पैसा debt में नहीं डालोगे. You still will get majority of good return in equities, right?
Right.
तो मतलब तभी डालना चाहिए debt में और उतना ही डालना चाहिए.
Okay. आपका definition क्या है personal finance का? आप अपने personal finances कैसे manage करते हैं?
I have a very different way of thinking about my personal journey because I was very clear from day one. I come from business family, right? So I will create wealth for myself by being an entrepreneur, right?
Mhm.
So like जो मेरा इन्वेस्टमेंट है वहां मैं बहुत सेफ खेलता हूँ, बहुत सेफ.
Okay.
Majority of my money is parked in my father's business, which is a fixed
Okay.
income, right?
Okay.
अभी उस पे मेरे को 8-9% मिलता है. I'm okay,
Okay.
right? Because मेरे को, but for someone else it will be very different. So for me, मेरे को I want to keep my bandwidth very clear for my business. So everything else is distraction for me, right? So but that's very personalized for me, right?
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Like if I knew that I will not create huge wealth through entrepreneurship, I will obviously look for index funds and create long-term equity from that, right? So that, like, for me, I play very safe on my personal. So if you ask me, मेरा 80% is in debt,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right? But not recommended for everyone, and like
Understood.
generally not recommended, right?
Understood. Understood. And so we coming to the fag end towards of our questions and conversation. So what's your take on a new asset class which is evolving called cryptocurrencies and digital assets?
So like if you ask me about Web3, I'm still able to not grasp it, but as such, philosophically, I'm very anti-crypto currency as such, right? I don't think these are good for humanity, and that's a very philosophical view, right? As much
Why?
as
Why?
like the whole, like, and this, like, general crypto believers think that governments don't do a
Right.
good job, and you need decentralization and democratization and etc.
Okay.
But I generally believe that if after all corruption, everything, central agencies all over the world in different form of governance, whether it is democracy, autocracy, social, communism, etc., have still done a better job than a crypto would do, right? And that's the hypothesis, right? So imagine, like, today, obviously everybody has different influence in industry, in democracy also, but Ambani has one vote, I have one vote, right? Mr.
Yeah.
Ambani has one vote, I have one vote. In crypto, he will have 1 lakh crore votes and I will still have one vote. That's how
Right.
it could play out. And we have seen some of the protocols where people made majority and took away the money, right? The money was
Yes.
siphoned off,
Yes.
etc.
Yes.
So
Yes.
these seem very sexy per se, but I don't think they are good for humanity, right? And like, and this is that's why, like, I like capitalism. I'm very capitalist at heart, but extreme capitalism is also bad, right? Because on an extreme capitalist, if you go to extreme capitalism, either if you have money, you are a customer. If you don't have money, you are a beggar.
Right.
Imagine a shops, like somebody who sells, rice bags. For him, he will sell rice bag to someone who has money. He doesn't care whether that person is hungry or not, right?
Correct.
And like, so you need some centralized agency to make sure that morality is there. There is some lawfulness in the way society works. And I think crypto evades that. I think there are always going to be debates, right? There are always going to be alternate philosophy. When there was capitalism, there was communism.
Right.
Now there is this whole decentralization and democratization. But I don't really like buy that. I'm very anti-crypto.
Right. So I think the one side of the story, people say that it will control inflation. I'm not sure how, or how, it might also, because maybe the centralized currency, which they call Bitcoin, right, which is like going to be, maybe they're comparing it to gold, that's in short supply apparently, where there's like 21 million coins, right? And that, because of that supply, which is like in limited, they might be able to control inflation if that is like a global currency. So that's one leg, but I wanted to know your views on
even if, like, my opinion wouldn't change even if it able to control inflation. What money or currency or central finance systems serve as a purpose for society, I think centralized systems do that better compared to decentralized system, is the core belief, right? So what people do is they take field example of centralized currencies and they say therefore centralized is bad. But if you see in last 60, 80, 100 years, the poverty has reduced in the world, right? All data, like, not just India, across CA.
Absolutely.
So, like, if you see centralized agencies have been working, right? They are not ideal, they are not efficient. There are corruption, there are scandal, there are fraud that will happen. But I think like the centralized agencies are serving a purpose.
Correct. Agreed. So I think corruption se to, matlab, there is a lot of hacking happening in this space only. Like every other
Yes.
day we are seeing that. So corruption is we can't even compare, because यहाँ पे जो जिस हिसाब से hacking चल रही है उस हिसाब से maybe if you have a lot of wealth, or you have created a lot of wealth in this space, overnight, if you are not protecting it right properly via maybe whatever way you are doing it, you might lose it day tomorrow, because you can't control this entire digital this thing. So on
Yes.
that space, I think that that's a
Yeah,
very
therefore
valid
you
point.
need centralized system. Therefore, I'm a,
Correct.
like I want like philosophically I will prefer a
Understood.
centralized system over a decentralized system.
आज मेरे क्रेडिट कार्ड से कुछ डेबिट हो गया, कोई ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ, तो आई कैन गो टू आरबीआई, आई कैन गो टू द बैंक एंड फाइल अ ombudsman or something like that to the cell, and that is not possible here because everything is decentralized. You can't go anywhere. So I maybe agree to
And
your
there have
point.
been like if you leave it to market, right? Market can take like much worse turn. Like we know why Chinese apps are RBI is going after Chinese apps very badly.
Right.
What they did is they actually took out photos of people from their memory, morphed those photos into nudes, and started blackmailing those people that
Yes.
if you don't pay
Yes.
up,
Right.
right? Now imagine, and there have been in Chinese P2P also, there have been use cases where the borrower were asked to submit a nude photo as collateral. If you don't pay,
Oh.
they by own volition you have to submit. Then only you'll get
Okay.
the loan amount. Right?
Oh. Okay.
Now in a decentralized system, that's because the buyer is agreeing, the seller is agreeing, right? There is nothing wrong. But there is fundamentally ethically wrongs, and somebody needs to protect the society, right? So
Understood.
like, and that's what lawmakers do, like the regulators do, and they're 90% of the time right.
Right.
So
Right.
like I'm telling you, this is
Yeah.
billion
Yeah.
dollar
Agreed.
question for me. It is
Agreed.
whether
Agreed.
centralized or decentralized.
Yeah. So I think that Chinese wala example which you gave had been in the news a lot, because they were like lending it to people, and then because they were defaulting, they used to hack their phones and take or mock
No,
those
in India, at
photos.
least they were morphing it, so
Correct.
which is completely illegal. It's fraud.
Correct.
In
Right.
China, like the borrower asked, if you want a loan, give us the nude photo.
Okay. Okay.
So borrowers
Understood.
had to submit by their own volition. Is
And
what I read. I mean, I haven't verified it.
correct. Correct.
It's
Yeah.
very
You
hard to
cannot.
verify.
It's a very closed economy, so you can't.
Huh.
But still, like imagine the thing which the borrower would be in such a rush to get that money that he was agreeing to do that. And obviously I'm assuming those interest rate will be exorbitant, because it might be a small
Could
ticket
be. I
size
mean,
loan.
I'm saying, but
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
like even if let's say buyer and seller, the lender and borrower agrees, should this be allowed?
Not at all.
Huh.
This is
And
not a
like,
collateral.
then you need somebody to step up and say, and that should be a centralized agency in my mind, which is at least democratic, at least somebody
Yes.
has which has some value system inherent to it, right?
Understood. Understood. I think this was a great, conversation. But last two questions, and we end it. Ajinkya, what's your definition of financial freedom? And what are the few books, letters, blogs, articles, which changed your thinking towards maybe finance, towards life, towards psychology, philosophy, anything?
Yeah, financial freedom is freedom of time. What you have limited is not anything else but time, right? And ability to do whatever you want is basically financial freedom. That doesn't mean that I will retire or I'll go to some beach. I still would want to work, for example, but if I don't want to work, I'll go to a beach, right? So that having that choice is financial freedom, like, right? And that is basically in startups we have runway, right? Like burn rate,
Yes. Yes.
and how much like and for me, if like personal life, you also have runway, right? You have certain savings and you have certain expenditures per month or per year. If you have 40-50 years runway, that means you're financially independent. Doesn't mean that you will not earn money. Right? So that's how I think of financial EA. And there people generally like I also see that there are two kind of bars generally, like when people say this runway, they have a singular runway in mind or singular total. If ask people how much money is good enough for you to retire, people will have one answer. There are generally two answers. One is comfortably okay, and second is lavish, right? And that lavish index keeps on increasing because your lifestyle, your wants.
Of course.
Once you have one kind of car, you want to have another better car, etc., right? So that lavishness amount will always increase, but your baseline will kind of increase with inflation, which is much achievable for people. Right.
Correct.
So I like, that's how I look at it. These are two inflection points in my life. First is I have comfortable, so that I don't have to earn to live. Like I'll still earn, but I'll do whatever I like. And second is lavish, that I'm done for life. Right. So these are
Right.
2 points, and that's how I see financial
What's
freedom.
your number?
Like I worked in an NGO full time about 7-8 years back in 2014 for about 3 to 6 months, and there my month, and this is 2014, right, and not like very, therefore at there my monthly expense in total were 5,000, including food, living, etc. Right. So if you ask me that, then I'm like, if you ask me the baseline, I'm sorted.
Right. Okay.
Because I was still living happily. It wasn't
Okay.
like I was feeling very bad.
Mhm.
It was a very nice campus, very nice locality to live in. Quality of life was very good, right?
Mhm.
So that way I'm sorted. But higher number, I've stopped thinking about it.
Okay. Okay. Any book recommendations?
Book on personal finance, I tell everyone, like Rich Dad and Poor Dad and Psychology of Money are very good starting points.
Right.
Personally, the book I loved a lot, which had a lot of impact on me, was *Sapiens*, which is by Yuval Harari.
Mhm.
Uh,
Right.
So, like, and there are many books. I mean, like, but for finance, these 2 books, *Rich Dad, Poor Dad*, *Psychology of Money*, are really great starting points.
Understood. Cool. So Ajinkya, I think we loved the conversation. I think how you explained about the debt part, how this entire risk is there, obviously your personal journey, your take on digital assets. We absolutely loved the conversation. So thank you for taking the time out today. I think people who want to invest on the debt side of the market would learn a lot from this conversation, I personally feel. So thanks for enlightening at least us and the audience who listen to this on your views on the debt side, asset allocation, cryptocurrencies, digital assets, etc. So, absolutely loved it, and I hope to we meet physically and do a podcast once we have those machinery behind us for sure.
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasant conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, Samarth, anything else from your end?
Thank you so much, Ajinkya. I think this is like fixed instrument investment 101 sort of a podcast that we did. And I think people, especially the ones who are graduating just out of college, for them, the hype is all around equity and stocks mein dalenge and crypto mein dalenge. But this will, be that startup point to understand how fixed income instruments work. And इसमें पैसा डालना चाहिए. मतलब ऐसा नहीं है that this is something that should be avoided.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you again.
And
Thank you so
also
much.
thanks to